And my mother is the owner on record, and I'm her durable power of attorney. And I would like to state that this property was sold to Sean Campbell about 3 years ago. And I just want to make sure that she is not being held responsible for the damages and being held liable for the cost of the raising of the structure.
Andrew, you want to move to that?
I believe that your mother's name is still the deed on file.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure again what transactions are taking place or.
Okay, I have a.
But I don't believe it's on file at the Registry of Deeds office. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, and I'll tell you why. This is a signed contract between myself and Sean Campbell, and it's dated June 2nd, 2016. We agreed to sell the property to him for $10,000 and make payments, which he did. Once he finished paying off the property, I didn't quite know, since we handled it ourselves, I wasn't quite sure of how to transfer the deed. So I loaned him the title to the house. His mother was there, as always, and she took the title and she took it to her attorney. That's the last time I saw the title. Neither one of them will give it back to me, so I can take it and get the title into his name. This is before all the damage occurred. He's listening to the wrong people, saying he thinks he has some kind of rights because he has the title in his possession, even though it's not in his name. And no amount of encouragement and I even had a police officer go in and tell him, it's not doing you any good. So this is why it's still in her name. But I do have a bill of sale, and I have the contract, and the final payment and everything.
So, Ron, your main concern is, as far as the city is concerned and the commission, is that you don't want to be held liable for any of the expenses.
That's correct.
So,
That's correct.
So correct me as I somewhat go into, try to summarize for Mr. Yvonne. The way the process works is that, this is a public hearing.
Mm-hmm.
The commission will be voting here in just, when we go down to actually, are we going to go to formal action on this one?
That is under
Yeah.
ordinances and resolutions.
So, okay, so what's going to happen is the commission, will listen to the case, and I don't think that this residence is habitable anymore. I mean, I feel.
Oh, I agree.
Looking at it. So what's going to happen, whoever is on the tax roll, the city will go in and take bids,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever, the low bid is, we will assess it against the property, against the lot. If you don't come up with the money, it eventually go up to tax sale, whether it'll bring that or not, so the city will probably take a loss in all
Okay.
honesty, because I doubt that anybody, would want to make acquisition of claim.
I understand that.
Do you know whether the taxes are up to date on it?
They are not, and that was part of the contract, was that he was to keep up on the taxes because they were up to date as of the date of the sale. And they have not been paid as of the date of the sale because he hasn't been paying them. Sean Campbell has not, even though that was in our contract.
So there's never a quit claim deed. There's a quit claim deed that they refer to that you can do automatically, but obviously wasn't transacted, otherwise it wouldn't be, in your.
Mhm.
So I think, Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, with that process, I doubt that your mom would ever, be held liable,
Okay.
for that, whatever the demolition of the cost is going to be. All we can do is assess it back to the real estate.
Okay.
Yes,
That's-
We assess all costs against the property owner, so if the property is going to change hands, that cost will follow the property owner.
Okay, so she's clear of it then, as far as the cost of the raising.
If the property is deeded in a manner and that gets filed and goes through the appropriate channels that kind of you alluded to, we don't assess the costs against. The cost will be assessed against the property owner, so if you're in the process of selling the property or changing
So, so you're gonna have to go down, you're gonna have to make sure that everything is legal at the Register of Deeds. Your piece of paper right there doesn't mean a lot unless it's actually legal down at the Sherman County Courthouse. So,
Well, how do I change it over if he has the title and won't give it back?
I don't know how to answer that question, but you have to
The
talk.
best option there would go to the titling company and talk to them about that. They would probably have a better recourse for you, maybe how to handle that. And like Tom said, a quick
I've-
claim
Mhm.
deed is usually the best way for a quick transaction.
I've spoken with them, after he paid it off, and, they said I need to talk to an attorney. But, I don't know what other recourse to take. I can't afford an attorney. I'm trying to catch up back taxes on my mother's other property, so,
It may need to go to the courthouse and talk to the register of deeds. Maybe that'll lead you in the right direction too.
okay, all right. Like I said, my main concern is just that, she's not gonna be held liable for anything on that happened to the property. Okay, so that's a no, right?
Unless she wants to buy the property back for whatever it costs the city, I mean, that's, gonna be the natural course of action.
It's not worth it. I wanted to raise it in the first place, so,
So I
okay.
think, I don't think that typically speaking from the liability on this, I
Mhm.
think the question for us is the assessment of costs, right? We go through this process, the city incurs costs, who is responsible for that cost? That cost is responsible to the property owner, which right now is your mother. If that property changes hands, it will still be assessed to the property, so it'll be whoever takes ownership of that property. If the property does not change hands, then really, again, the term of liability doesn't really come into factor, it's just the cost responsibility would stay with her.
Mhm.
And then if she just, essentially, because it sounds like she kind of wants to get out of this property, and so if she doesn't.
She doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
So
those
she's
costs
90 and in a
aren't
nursing
paid.
home.
It's kind of like the mayor said, those costs will go, the property will go to tax sale and it will be disposed of in that manner.
Okay,
So either way, it's not like there is a liability there for her, as far as I know, and I don't know the attorney.
I understand. Okay. All right, thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Mhm.
So we're going, anybody else on that property? We're gonna close the hearing at 5:09. And we're going to go down to item B, open up, public hearing for fiscal year 2021 budget. We're gonna open it at 5:10. Andy?
The mayor, commissioners, this public hearing was advertised and noticed in the newspaper in accordance with Kansas state law. The city commission must hold public hearing before adopting its budget for FY 2021. In your agenda packet, you do have the budget summary that was published in the newspaper. In addition, we were all given handouts of the new budget line items that have changed since the last meeting. If you'd like to read your budget books, we can swap them out, otherwise it's good to swap them out right now. Again, this public hearing is the opportunity for any member of the public to provide city input on any proposed budget.
So we have an open hearing on the FY 2021 budget. Anybody want to expound, comment on the budget? It's going to be formally passed here down in our formal action. So we're going to close the hearing at 5:11. All right, we move down to item number 3, public comment. Randy Gavin, where are you, friend? There you go. Take the podium, state the name and the nature of your business.
All right, Randy Gavin, Commissioners, people of Goodland. Reason for being here today is just the Flatliner Committee wants to announce that they're going to have a formal meeting to find out whether or not we're going to go ahead and have Flatlanders this year. It's been something we've been thinking about. We're not sure what's going on with the car club, et cetera, et cetera. We're all gonna be meeting tomorrow at 7 PM. We invite anyone that wishes to comment or, offer suggestions. And that'll be at 1819 Cherry, which is where Topside Aquatics and all that is. Yeah. And that'll be at 7 PM tomorrow. So we appreciate anybody that has feedback, whatever.
Any, maybe I'm putting you in the spot, but
Sure.
any comment as to what gave, precept to this, why we don't want to have 5 rangers?
Well, it's not that, well, we're always wanting to have it, I mean, our committee has been, one of the only driving force into doing that, as well as from help from the city and the county commission in terms of, helping with funding and all that.
As well as the Chamber of Commerce.
And Chamber of Commerce, of course, and, we really want to go ahead and do it. Whether or not we're going to have enough fuel to get to that finish line is going to remain to be seen. We've done this so many times, and we know we can pull this off, and, it's 2 months away, but a little less, but it can be done. So we're not really concerned with the time frame. It's just, we want to welcome what everybody thinks, what people's feelings are about everything, so. And seriously, we want as many people there as possible. I'd like to flood that room, because I'm all for having it, and there's maybe a couple people that are not, so we welcome everybody. All right?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for what you guys do.
Thank you.
So we move on to item number 4, consent agenda, item A and B. Item A, July 20th, meeting minutes. Item B, appropriation ordinances 2020-15, 2020-15A, 2020-P15. Entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
That's so moved.
Have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Thompson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by JJ. Any further thoughts or comments? Mary, you first.
Olson.
Yes.
Grandma.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Harris. Chrisman.
Yes. Move on to item number 5, ordinances and resolutions. Item A, resolution 1567, infrastructure, 1521 Kansas Avenue.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Resolution 1567 is in the agenda packet. This is an action item from the public hearing pertaining to this property. Approved resolution 1567 will designate the property at 1521 Kansas as an unfit structure. In doing so, initiates the unfit structure process, giving the property owner 30 days to remedy or make improvements to the property. At the end of that 30-day period, where the city commission doesn't see improvement made, item will be brought back to this body for potentially being put out for demolition, put out for bid for demolition. So we do recommend approval of resolution 1567 at this time.
I think we're all pretty well acquainted with the logistics of this thing, the parameters, so I will entertain a motion on item A, resolution 1567.
I'll move that with resolution 1567.
I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Brombaugh. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Harris. Any other questions or concerns? Mary, report.
Grandma.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Chrisman.
Yes. Move on to item number 6, presentations and proclamations. Item A, downtown revitalization plan presentation. Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. I'd like to have our summer intern, Somna. He's going to talk a little bit about the summer project, and then we're going to play his presentation on downtown revitalization. Any comments, input from the Commission? No?
Okay, thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you everyone for this opportunity. And it's last 2 months have been very exciting for me, talking to the business owners and every people over here in Goodland. So this presentation, what we have over here, is is made for this 15 minutes. It's 15 to 20 minutes, and we have a longer presentation which is like 30 minutes. It's a documentary based on the downtown businesses, the plan, the idea, what people talked about, what their idea was. So the city will be uploading the full presentation today or tomorrow anytime. And please enjoy this presentation and documentary, and if you have any questions, please ask after that. I'll request Josh.
into statutory basis. To do that, we have to do quite a bit of work on the financial statements in terms of confirmation, interviews, analysis, testing procedures, that type of thing. We do feel that we have an adequate testing and procedures performed to give an opinion. Now, because your financial statements are a matter of public record, we first have to tell everybody that you're not in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And that's what's going on in those last two paragraphs at the bottom of the page. Because you've opted out of that, which is what most communities in the state of Kansas do, is they don't go for generally accepted accounting principles, they go for the statutory basis financial statements. So at the top of the next page where it says adverse opinion, that is in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Again, we're just informing someone else that you're not doing that. But we do indicate in that second paragraph on that page that based upon the regulatory basis of accounting, we feel that the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects with the Kansas Municipal Accounting and Audit Guide. That particular document has supplemental information that's required, and that is what's presented after the footnotes. And we have to give an opinion on that, and basically that's what that next paragraph does, is tells you that we feel that information in the back, your schedules 1, 2, and 3, are fairly stated in accordance with the same basis of accounting as the financial statement that's up front. And there's also the prior year comparison in the back, and again, we give an opinion on that from the standpoint that we previously audited the financial statements from the year before. We feel that they're fairly stated, and therefore the information included in here is fairly stated in accordance with that statutory basis of accounting. If you turn to pages 3 and 4, and 5 and 6, is basically the statement that goes under statutory basis. It tells you what happened from unencumbered cash to cash receipts, expenditures, and unencumbered cash by fund. It's a summary, basically, of the detail that's in the back. And then we also reconcile the unencumbered cash back to cash balances by including those last two columns, basically adding back the payables and encumbrances that are in the expenses, and coming up with what the cash balance is. Cash receipts are cash receipts. In other words, we don't have any accounts receivable in these or in these financial statements. It is just cash receipts. That prior year canceled encumbrance column, basically what that amounts to is when you have an encumbrance from the year before in which you don't expend all of that encumbrance, something happens, either somebody wasn't able to fulfill the contract or made a decision at one point in time to do something, and that those circumstances change. So that basically gets added kind of back to the previous year by putting it in that column. You just have the one fund, cemetery improvement, and $7,400. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about.
Ask one question on that.
Sure.
If your scenario happens and you have that cash left over during the course of the budget year, during when you're in the midst of it in the year, can you not, through a vote, move that fund over into a different line item?
Can you give me an example?
Like economic development, it's not operating right now.
Okay.
We got other plans for it now. There's money there. Can we move it over to salary and benefits, or move it over to somewhere else if we all have a vote on it during the course of a year, or if you overfund something terribly?
Well, that kind of depends upon the fund itself. The budget basically ends up being the driving force about as to what happens that year. So if you have for example, if you have a fund that has ad valorem taxes, i.e. mill levy, that type of thing, and that's for a specific purpose, then it really should stay within that fund for that specific purpose and be used for it. There are alternatives which I'll kind of go over in terms of some of the funds of what you could do. But the actual ad valorem taxes, those taxes that you have a mill levy for, and the mill levy was basically agreed to by the statute, by the people and by statute for a specific purpose, it needs to stay within that fund for that purpose.
So after we pass the budget and vote on it once, we can't vote down the road 6 months later to, if we want to move something over. Basically, that's what you're saying.
You're asking me a loaded question, because I'm not gonna say that you can't move funds if there's budget room between one fund and another fund. For example, if the water fund ends up having quite a bit of cash coming into it, that doesn't mean that you can't transfer some of that revenue, i.e. through transfers over to another fund and be expended within another fund. But at that point in time, you also got to watch what you're doing budget-wise. If you budget $500,000 in whatever fund the city you want to move the money to, and you move over $1 million, you can't spend $1 million unless you would adjust the budget. You have to go through that process. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
I mean, without a specific, what am I trying to move, it's kind of hard to answer your question.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have if we miss the mark on a line item, it's quite a bit, and we want to.
Okay,
And
within a line item on a budget, the state doesn't care how far off you are on a one line item. They are concerned about your budget in total. So that's the reason I was using 500,000.
Can you move to a different department?
Again, it depends on where you're moving what money from what money to one place. If the money is put into this fund because it's supposed to be used in that fund, and then you try to move it, no. If it's a special revenue fund that just has like fees or something like that coming into it, yes, the money could be. Like I said, it kind of depends on what fund we're talking about and what the purpose of that fund was and how that money was set up to begin with, and how it's being put in there.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. With that, basically the funds that I'm going to talk about now are just the ones that kind of went up big or went down some. I'm not going to talk about all the funds.
Carol, it might help the commission if you would reach the page that you're looking at.
Okay. I'm still on page 3 and 4, and I'm looking at the general fund. General fund basically went up from the year before from $627,000 to $648,000. Interesting part is it went up because taxes were actually down a little bit in that particular fund, but you had 4 departments that expenditure-wise were down, which ended up resulting in an actual increase in that particular fund. Cemetery improvement also went up, but mostly because you're finished with that. In the cemetery, so your building land costs were down compared to the year before, and that's the reason it went up. Your self-insurance is another one that went up from the year before, mostly because the expenses were down. I think the revenues were somewhat similar, but the expenses were down. Then you have self-insurance, which is, I'm sorry, what self-insurance for airport, I'm sorry. It's up. It's up the last couple of years, about the same amount each year. So basically what's going on there is the fees are staying fairly close to what they were the year before, and or the expenses are staying fairly close. So it's gone up pretty good, but it's kind of similar to each year as to what's going on there. Also, that's the same thing on the equipment reserve and the municipal equipment reserve and the capital improvement reserve. Both of those are up, and again, they were up the previous year. As the transfers are being made into those, expenses are coming fairly closely, or the transfers are up so much to cover whatever extra was spent this year. Employee benefits, the taxes were up in that particular one, and expenses were up, but only slightly. So that's the reason for the increase in that particular fund. Your capital projects, for the most part, they're down, but that's usually to be expected as the capital project gets finished from one year to the next. It goes down. I think the only one you had to go up was the steep street improvement project, and that was mostly because the interest income that came in there, because the actual street improvement, most of that was done the previous year. It's just the money that's coming in there from investments. Down under business funds, your electric utility is revenues are up, expenses are down, so that's the reason it increased. Water utility fund was basically down. It was down both because the revenues that came in, expenses were down, but not as much as revenues were down, so that's the reason it went down. Your sewer utility went down, that was basically transfers out to cause that. Solid waste was up, and so were most of your reserves due to transfers being made into those particular funds. So anyway, at the end of the year, on page 5, 6, we went from $9,862,000 to $10,308,000 in unencumbered cash. And cash overall was at $11,173,000 in those various accounts that are shown down at the bottom. Then we get into the footnotes. I'm not going to cover them in great detail. Basically, it's for someone who not as familiar with what's going on in the city to explain what is going on in the city. So it talks about, what related municipal entities are also included in this report, like the library. Talks about the different funds and what happens there, the budget process. One of the things from the statutory basis that we do check on is, goes from page, I guess it starts on page 9. Page 9, and that is that we check out to see the cash is adequately secured, either through FDIC coverage and or through pledged securities, and you were adequately secured. You had $11,542,182.60 at the bank, but it was all secured either by FDIC coverage and or pledged securities. Talked about this in the past on page 10. We have this footnote to define benefit pension plans. And just again, noting to you that this is a long process and how the state decides what your share of that thing is. But they've come up with $1,763,498 is your share of the liability, which I always, if you're wondering why I'm smiling, it's because they're not taking care of what they're supposed to, but they can tell you what you still owe. And the other part of it is that this is if everything happens just the way they say it's going to happen. All your employees that have to stay here, they have to work through, they'd have to retire when they say they're going to retire, they'd have to die when they say they die, that type of thing, in order for all this to work out to this thing. So it's really a big guessing game as to what that is. And obviously, people retire at different times. It's not everybody retires at once, so it's not like all the $1,700,000 would be due in 1 year either. It's going to be due for a long time frame. Long-term debt is on page 11 and 12. Really not too much change there, except that your debt went down in the series 2017 by the $225,000. You're now sitting at the end of the year with $5,700,000 overall. And that shows the breakdown as to when it's due down below there, starting in 2020 to the year 2025 or 29, to the year 2035 or 2039 when it's finally paid off. You do have some leases that are listed on page 12. And again, there was no additions, there was just reductions. So it went from $170,000 down to $133,000 due to the payments that were made there. Let's see, go to page 15. One of the things we have to do is we have to say whether you're in compliance with Kansas statutes, and they give us a long list of things that we're supposed to look for, the state does. And one of those is whether your funds have a negative unencumbered cash or a negative cash balance. And you did have in the airport improvement fund. However, you are allowed to have an exception for that if you have grants or money coming in that's going to cover that. So it's basically what that footnote is telling you, is there was a grant receivable that's going to cover that amount that's overexpended at the end of the year. Page 16, another thing the state looks for is whether you're over or under budget. Again, they don't care about line item, they just care in total. So you can be way over on one line item and way under on another, and you're fine, as long as that's to being at zero or below the budget. So anytime you have a other than a zero or an unbracketed amount in that four column, variance column, that's when you have would actually have some concern. And we would have to note it in the report, but we didn't have any of those. Page 17 and 18, we finally get into each individual fund and into the detail of each individual fund. So we start off with the general fund. As we talked about, total cash receipts are down slightly. Part of that is due to the fact that the Lorem tax is down. Some of that was made up in some of the other revenue items that come in for like licensing fees was up slightly. Charges for services was up about 30,000. So those help make up for what was down. The four departments, general and government was down quite a bit, and most of that's due to the number of transfers that were made the year before compared to this year. So it went from $1,043,000 in expenses last year to $863,000 this year. Fire department was down slightly. Part of that was due to, again, to the transfers and also commodities being down. Street and alleys was another one that was down, and most of that was due to the transfers being significantly down compared to the year before. IT services was a new department, and as you can see, it doesn't have any comparison to the prior year, but it ended up being about $130,000 overall compared to the budget of $163,000, so it was on the budget. The Stever Water Park is another one that went down, and again, it's due to the transfers not being as high. Well, actually, no transfers being made like this year compared to last year. And when I say this year, last year, I'm talking about 18, 19, not 19, okay? Other than that, I'm not sure that I have anything that's earth-shattering in terms of what could happen in the other funds. If you get back to self-insurance fund, wanted to talk about that one a little bit. We had total cash receipts of $516,000, most of that being operating transfers. Sitting with a fairly healthy cash balance of $259,000. See, this is a fund that, you know, basically the transfers could be lowered or maintained depending on what you think is going to happen in the next year, which is always a guessing game because health-wise you don't know what's going to happen somewhere, whether it's accident or otherwise. So that's where that one's at. And it's basically compadre, for lack of a better word, is the, trying to get to the employee benefit, whatever it is. Employee benefits is on page 35. So, and the reason I say that is because the health and accident insurance is what some of that's being transferred over to the self-insurance part. So that's kind of where the money's coming from, the self-insurance part. Ad valorem taxes were up significantly compared to the year before. So we also had transfers that were not as high as last year, but we're still up there quite a bit. So this fund ended up having an increase of $38,684, which is a good increase. But again, the problem with those two funds, self-insurance and employee benefit fund, is it's always nice to have a reserve there because you don't know what's going to happen in a particular year. This one might be a little more able to keep an eye on because you know what going into what your premiums you're going to usually end up being. Okay. The problem is that there's one of those big kickers that you have to take over self-insurance at that point in time. So, you know, you have plenty of budget room in case that happened, but personal experience, I know how much one operation can cost. So it's always worth watching on that. On, I think the other ones were the utility funds, and they start on page 43, 44. As you can see, water went up quite a bit. In fact, it was in surplus this year compared to last year, so it's sitting at $534,000. As a rule of thumb, when you're talking about a business, usually what you like to have on hand is about 3 months worth of net income compared to what your expenditures are. And in this particular fund, you're sitting at 1 month. Now, does that mean that it's all gonna fall apart. No, it's just something probably to shoot for, to make that fund stay healthy. You know, maybe you're getting to the point where the reserve doesn't have to be quite as big, transferred over, and, you know, that might be a possibility, cutting some of those transfers down, out of the general fund or wherever, to help increase, the income out of that. Water utility actually ended up being, even though it has had two rather big losses the last couple of years, 158,000, 156,000, is actually a little closer to being to that 3 months than the electric fund is. But it is still a little bit under that, what I want to call is the goal. I mean, if you want to look at it from that standpoint.
Were they under because of the amount of transfers that took place? I mean, we never lose money on the electric fund.
Well, I'm just saying, as a rule of thumb, that's what you look at. Just kind of keep yourself in pace with, that's what I'd always look at the bottom of each year, saying, how am I doing there, you know? If it's still dropping, might need rate increases. But, you know, it's just an ideal to shoot for, because if anything big happens to one of those funds, i.e. major storm or something like that, that could really wreak havoc on what cash balance is left. So that's the only thing I'm saying. I know you also have the reserves there to help kick in on that, some of that too, so you might want to take that into effect as well. Sewer fund, I think, was another one that was close to being at the 3 months worth of the expenditures, and then you get into then you do get into the reserve fund after that. So, any other questions? Generally, somebody will ask me, you know, how do we compare to the year before? Cash balances are up, that's good. Can't say that, you know, if there's anything hugely harmful or anything. Things look pretty good this year.
I guess my question is, what's the deal with the dollar amount? I just had a general question about the other thing about all year long is, so we opt out of the general accepted accounting practices every year. In your opinion, you think that's the best way to do it, not the best way to do it?
Okay, I'm not going to jump on one side or the other. I'm going to tell you the pros and cons, okay?
Okay, that'll
But from a accounting standpoint, statutory basis financial statements basically provide you a gut feeling as to where cash is at. And as far as I've seen to date, there still hasn't been any movement by the people who do the municipal bonds to lower our ranking in the state of Kansas because we're doing statutory basis financial statements. In fact, honestly, to me, it seems a little clearer to them, because now they know how much cash you have left. Generally accepted accounting principles, the nice thing about that is it does give you an overview of the entire workings, because it's going to tell you what receivable you had out there, it's going to tell you what infrastructure you have out there, and then you're going to decide basically whether you're going to depreciate that particular infrastructure, and I'm talking about streets, sewers, buildings, the whole bit. So all that cost has to be decided first. And then you can either depreciate it, or you can say that you're going to maintain everything at a set percentage. So let's say you're going to say, I'm only going to keep it 75% of what my cost is. And then the expenses there in that year are, in essence, expensed, as opposed to increasing the balance in the balance sheet and depreciated. So it gives you an overview, a good overview of everything that's going on, kind of gives you an idea of where we're at, wear and tear wise on infrastructure and stuff. So it does provide that good information. I don't know that it's giving you any more better bond rating than you already have, simply because the statutory basis seems to be okay with the powers that be on that. Okay, I'll tell you that the federal government is pushing hard for everybody to be a gap basis statement, but there's a lot of work involved in that first year putting it together. Okay? You're going to have to dig through records and or have estimates made, that type of thing, of what
it would cost to have that building put in. Thank you.
Any questions for Harold? Well, Harold, thank you so much. If you think of anything, we can call you.
All right, you sure can.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mayor, Commissioners, we do request a formal approval or acceptance of the audit reports.
So I will entertain a motion to accept the fiscal year 2019 audit report.
I move.
I have a motion by Commissioner Thompson. Do I have a second? Second. A second by Commissioner Ferris. Any questions? If not, Mayor, read
Thompson.
Yes.
Brumbault.
Yes.
Harris. Howard.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, we move on to item B, fiscal year 2021 budget. Andy?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. After having completed the public hearing for the FY 2021 budget, it stands to be adopted by the City Commission. Commissioners have any further discussion on the budget. This would be the time to have it, otherwise we do request adoption of the budget at this time.
I have just only one question. I was going through the documents, and at one time we would discuss that the total transfers was going to be $2,369,955, and it looks like it ended up at $3,363,644, close to $1 million additional in the transfers. Can you tell us where they went?
Let me pull up the form here. We have not added any additional transfers as a result of our budget process, so it may just be how it's represented on the.
Are your analysis, when you did your analysis, Andrew, did you include the transfers from employee benefits to self-insurance, all those ones that are part of your budget package on that? Because the state requires you to put those in.
Okay.
So that's probably where the difference is. Get that, let you have that. There's a few in there that the state requires.
And that you're talking about the 3.36, that's, yeah, so that's the total. The totality of all city transfers, summarized there. So I wouldn't speak to that previous number, what's reflected in the budget now should be accurate.
Any other questions for Andrew? If not, I will entertain a motion to accept the fiscal year 2021 budget as presented.
I'll move.
I have a motion by Commissioner Thompson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Commissioner Howard. Any questions or concerns? Mary, read the roll.
Ferris.
No.
Howard.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Brumbault.
Yes.
Garcia.
No. Okay, we move on to item number C, IFP 2020-02 power plant roof replacement.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. We did accept sealed bids for the replacement of the power plant roof, specifically the engine room roof, which has a ballasted roof over that facility, has had some significant holes to it. I kind of mentioned in my memo, seen videos of when it gets rainfall and water just pouring through. Obviously, that is an area we severely need to protect. The city has put away funding in the amount of $60,000 for this project in past years. We did, again, go through a sealed bid process and received only one bid. That was from Weathercraft Roofing in the amount of $37,760. And again, when they're going through, they're going to be peeling back the membrane, looking for wet insulation, and then replacing insulation as needed. And so they bid the amount of $4.20 per square inch of insulation to be replaced on that project. Considering the city's funding capacity to award this project and the fact that we have a bid within budget, we do recommend award of IFP 2020-02 to Weathercraft Roof.
Any questions for Andrew? Made it pretty bad, didn't it, Justin? Yeah.
Yes.
So I would entertain a motion on item C for the power plant roof replacement.
So
I have a motion on the floor, do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Commissioner Thompson. Any questions or concerns?
The only concern I have is it's one bid, we don't know if it's good or not. We've talked about this before, about if there's only one bid, we try to get another bid. I know it needs a new roof. That's my only thing. Do we know if this is a good number or not? You don't have more than one bid, you don't know if that's actually a really good number or not.
So you would suggest going out probably for some more?
Some more bids, I would. At this point, I'll vote for it, just because it needs a new roof, but otherwise, it would be a no.
$4 for something square inch could really add up.
Well, and the difficult thing that we always experience is that this was a sealed bid process. So we did put the notice out, request bidders. We did have contractors ask us about the project. And ultimately, we got who submitted. So we put the bid back out. You know, a lot of times we just get the same one bid. So I don't know what the hesitance was on this project, but we see it all the time on our infrastructures. Is we get at best two bids, but typically one bid.
Any thoughts from the other commissioners? JD, Brown?
No, I'm always in favor of having a couple bids. That was a frustration with mine coming on as well at times, but I was thinking, I mean, I don't know why there wasn't, what the answer is, and I just, sounds like we need definitely there and overdue, and so that's where I'm at, but I don't like the open-endedness of it usually.
Yeah.
Where all was it advertised?
So we advertise it typically to have a uniform process. We put it on the city website, and then there's that subscription process to where any contractor can sign up to receive notice of bid solicitations. So we didn't advertise it in the newspaper, but we did go through that, put it on our procurement website.
Maybe in the future, it'd probably be a good idea to advertise it in Goodland Star. You know, there's a lot of subscribers that take it there. I mean, you know, that'd be one more venue, you know, that we can actually reach out to.
Out here in the boonies, it's kind of limited on the people interested in coming out here and doing it. Unless it's slow in the city, come on.
So if all conscience are clear, I will entertain a motion to accept that power plant roof replacement.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, second, better, okay. So any, yeah, we're in discussion. So Mary, read the roll.
Trumbull.
Yes.
Ferris.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes. Okay. We move on to item D, IFB 2020-03 Airport Taxiway. Andrew?
And you, Mayor, Commissioners, you do have a handout in front of you which has the bid tabulation from the bid opening that we had this afternoon. Bids were opened at 2 o'clock. we did have a meeting with the airport board at that time to discuss some of our options on this bid tabulation. We have Darren Neufeld with us here this evening. I'll turn it over to him to kind of take us through what we are proposing and kind of where we're at fiscally on this project.
Welcome, Darren.
Good evening. Okay, so we put this project out for bid, and if you remember, we submitted a year ago, last fall, for KDOT aviation funding for the base bid. That's why we broke it into the base bid and the ad alternate. So we have $310,612 is what we were awarded from KDOT aviation for phase one, which is the base bid. We put it out for bid. We actually had, we really thought going into the day, the way we've been talking to several contractors, we thought we'd have as many as 5 bidders today, and we only ended up with 2 bidding. Everybody else came back and said their schedules are full for the next year now, so they just did not want to touch it. So we ended up with 2, Miller Construction here from Goodland and Bryant Construction out of Halstead. And you can see their total numbers for the base bid and the ad-alt 1. Going into this, reason we broke it up like we did, we knew ad-alt 1 did not have your funding available right now today. The plan was to award the base bid and then have the ad alternate 1 numbers so that we can turn right around in this next month and submit for this year's KDOT aviation grant using the bid number we have from the contractors for ad-alt 1. And as long as we don't do any work on ad-alt 1 before we'd actually go to construction, we can use their money to do it even though we've already bid it. So it's a process. The way we set it up is going to work good. What we're going to do is we're proposing, and we talked to the airport board about this, at this time we're proposing to award the base bid to Miller Construction in the amount of $429,687.50. And then what we're going to do is turn around and do a change order right away to move some of these quantities from the base bid to the ad-alt 1. So we increase what we're going to apply for with this next round of KDOT aviation to minimize what you have to pay on the base bid in hopes of getting that rest of that funding for those difference in quantities plus all of ad-alt 1. So originally, when we first applied for this grant, it was a 10% local match. So roughly in that magnitude of about $35,000. So what we did today is after the opening, we said keep your number at 35 plus you receive $30,000 in CARES Act money from the FAA. We can use that CARES Act money, that $30,000, to help pay your local share of this project. So that gives us $65,000 roughly that you already were, I mean, the $30,000 of CARES Act money plus $35,000 you were already kind of looking to budget for this project. Use that money and then design, or not design, but build the base bid to that number. And then everything that doesn't fit within that number of the overall, we'll push that over to ad-alt 1 and apply for the KDOT aviation money here in September for that remaining portion. As of right now, both of these contractors proposed constructing this in the spring. We had originally put this out to construct the base bid this fall, but already about 2 weeks ago, I had been contacted by every contractor but one that said there's no way they can even think about it in the fall. And the one that was even thinking about it in the fall has now turned around and said he didn't even bid it because NAFI's full up for the entire year, for the next 12 months. So nobody had any availability to construct this fall, and nobody really wanted to stick their neck out and say, yes, we're going to build it in early spring with weather unknown. Although we did talk to Miller Construction after the bid opening, and pending weather, if weather is decent, they would entertain possibly starting earlier if the winter doesn't, completely shut the contract or construction down. So at this point in time, I think we have a plan or a way to move forward, minimizing what costs you as a city no more than what you had planned to do before as far as the budget towards this project. And we can get it replaced starting next spring. And hopefully then in January is when this last year, late January, is when KDOT Aviation announced this year's awards. So we'll know before even construction starts on the base bid, if we have the money to go ahead and award the add-alt to them, and just they can move in right from the base bid right through add-alt 1 and be done with the whole project. So.
And taxiway B's where it's got all of the ridges on concrete, that, what kind of construction are they gonna be doing?
Okay, taxiway B, I don't have a good map, I'm sorry. Taxiway B is this little chunk that actually runs, right, it connects to taxiway, this is taxiway A, that's now concrete compared to this photo that was taken. Taxiway B connects to taxiway A right here and runs in front of the new Frontier Ag off the backside of their new hangar, in front of the light bulb, in front of these 2 box hangars, and ties into the other little stub that goes out to this end of 523 and over here to the T hangars. So it's kind of a triangle taxiway system that connects the T hangars and John Tompos hangar back to the main apron. And it's currently all asphalt. It was currently constructed approximately in 2000. And so that asphalt has just reached the end of its life. It was never designed for heavyweight aircraft. It was designed for the T hangars. And then after that was those bigger boxes with the little heavier loads of the ag sprayers, plus the bigger hangar with John's aircraft. So it just needs to be replaced. This new construction will be concrete. It will be designed to withstand the same weight as any of the other taxiways on the airfield or the runways. That's how it's designed.
Any questions for Darren?
The concrete coming from,
Actually, the concrete on this project, Miller Construction, I saw Matt's Matt here. Yeah. It's Slosher. Yeah, the Slosher concrete will have this.
Awesome.
very good.
So, and actually, you'll see on there's the engineer estimate. That's the first column. I think on the sheet that, I think pretty sure it's on there. My engineer's estimate was about 10% less than what Miller Construction bid. And surprisingly, it's not in the concrete. Slosher concrete came in right where I had estimated at. It was all in the base. And we're asking for crushed concrete at the base. It's not like we're asking for a special rock coming from 300 miles away. It's just there was still an item that ended up being more expensive than we had planned. So.
Well, if there are any questions for Darren, I would entertain the ISB 2020-03 Airport Taxiway B to be allocated to Miller's Construction, an amount of $429,687.50.
I'll do that.
Have a motion
I'll make a motion.
by Commissioner Ferris. Have a second by JD.
And sorry, if we can just jump in on what, the city doesn't have the funding capacity essentially to award that full, that's over what we have on this project. So as part of this discussion, the board and Darren and I all met this afternoon to discuss how to bring that within budget, so.
What we need to do is add on to that end of that motion contingent upon review and approval by KDOT Aviation and with working with the contractor and contingent upon the contractor's agreement to reduce to what I talked about, reducing the scope of the base bid.
So what we'd like to do is at the next meeting, bring you a change order.
We'll bring you a change order at the next meeting.
Okay.
And that way we can go ahead and award it tonight to get it locked in and then work on the change order officially.
But contingent on
KDOT Aviation approval
and
working with Miller Construction for the change order.
So you want to minimize your motion to say that?
Yeah, I'll add that.
Sorry about that. I meant to say that earlier.
You have a second. All right. Any further questions, concerns? Mary, read the roll.
Ferris,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Brumble,
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Thank you, Darren.
Thank you. And as the update to follow on to that, there's other things that are going to be going on. We should be hearing around the 1st of October from the FAA, giving the city the go-ahead to get the design done and out to bid of the crosswind runway replacement. that the money, he is once again asked about that, and the money has been allocated and is sitting there on the Fed side. So that's, as of right now, we should have that out to bid in the spring after get that notice and get that process rolling, so.
All right. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so we move on to our next item. Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. You have in your agenda packet an application from Linda Welch, who is seeking application to the High Plains Museum Board. Application again is included. There is one vacancy on the board, and appointed board members do serve 3-year terms on those boards.
She works for the college or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
It says she's an English and communications instructor.
And so you just need it, you'll bring it back for an official vote at our next meeting?
Yes.
Any questions for Andrew on the appointment? No, Rachel? No. Okay. So we move on to item number B, PIC consulting contract. Andrew, I requested that you put this thing on the agenda.
Yes, and I do need to apologize. I was just looking at the document in the
Yes.
agenda packet is the business associate agreement. That is not the contract for consulting services. So I apologize. I must have uploaded the wrong document there. I don't know if Commission would like to table discussion until, I did provide that contract for consulting services back in February.
That's right.
Commissioners had requested all the contracts, but that is not the document in your agenda packet.
I kind of caught it because, I mean, I said, well, it just didn't make any sense. I pulled the original off all those cobbled contracts that you had sent us back. I think it was about, but, whatever, is there any, I know that, JJ, do you have the contract? Or you just have the agreement?
I got the agreement,
That's just
I'd
the
have to
agreement,
go
that's-
back
That's
and
invalid,
find
so.
it, yeah.
Probably, you don't have, because that's the agreement too.
No, I've got the contract.
So I've got one, but I mean, that's not gonna do any good without the other commissioners having it. So what I would recommend is getting it back. We can have some discussion, but I mean, without you having the contract or the other commissioners, it'd be a futile, conversation for us. I mean, you could go back to do you remember when that was, that you sent that thing out? You could probably.
Yeah, it was in February.
In February?
February
18th. Oh, you got it in front of you? Oh, okay. Okay, well, I'll tell you what.
You have the folder of all those contracts I sent out?
It was a shared Google
It's
Drive.
in there. I don't have.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I do apologize, that was a mistake on my part that I didn't catch. Nature of the contract is it is a 3-year contract. It provides consulting services for us, both benefit, payroll, health insurance, those services. So if there's any questions, if there's any questions I can answer without getting out of the contract.
So the question that I would have, so the reason it was brought up because it has a 90-day clause, and commissioners have requested, the contracts that would have, questions as far as 90 days clause, that they want to know, before the 90-day period, ended. So that's, one of the reasons that we get. But I mean, we can put it off. And what do you think? I mean,
I'm good waiting, I'm good going now, I'm familiar with it, it's up to those that haven't had that, I can do either.
so that's still, let's go ahead and put it off for next meeting. That way, you can email it to JJ and then we can discuss it at our next meeting. The only reason is, you know, that we need to get right on it, depending on what the commission, you know, agrees, as far as the renewable one.
Well, and to be clear about one item of there, it is a 90-day rolling term. The language in the termination, as far as I read, is that you can terminate it at any time, you just have to give 90 days notice. So it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to that March contract date. It's just 90 days notice, whenever notice is.
So it would be December, November, so you'd have to do it by no later than September, because the contract says that you have to send documentation by registered mail, you know, has to be delivered to you. There was a clause there that I was reading and I never
Yeah.
sure.
There's a specific section in reference there.
Installation, yeah. Yeah.
So I think we will be good. Let's do that, and that way we'll have a bit, you know, to read it and to look it over, and then we'll just put it on the agenda for our next meeting.
Sure.
Any other concerns for Andrew or questions?
Nothing today.
All right. We move on to report, City Manager Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Notes. Okay, so we are chip sealing today. They did a majority of the work today. We'll have about a half day tomorrow of, and it's predominantly cherry. They'll be on tomorrow. But we are in our annual chip seal right now, so that's what most of our public works departments have been working on today, and they will be tomorrow as well. I had emailed this out to commissioners, but we did receive a $25,000 grant from the Dane Hansen Foundation for the museum renovation project. And then we did also receive $10,000 for the resurfacing of the tennis courts at Steeper Park. Another bright spot was on our sales tax for July. We did have a disbursement of $56,191.86 for the month of July. That was up over 2019, which was $53,790.91. So again, going back 2 months, that is the month of May. So the City of Goodland actually had a better May this year than it did in 2019. Our sales tax for the year is up about $20,000 over where we were last year. We did budget in, we did revise down our budget to take a $25,000 loss on sales tax this year. And right now we're about $20,000 ahead of where we were last year. So there's, the city's in a very good spot, and there would have to be a very substantial swing for us not to come in ahead of budget there. An update on the Economic Development Board. They did meet on August 17th. That was their second meeting, and talked with them about the desire for a joint meeting being kind of the next step, and they agreed that the next meeting on August 17th would work for them. I'm still waiting on confirmation from the County Commission, but it sounds like we'll have another joint city-county meeting with the board present on August 17th.
That concludes your report?
Yes.
All right, any questions for Andrew?
Where are we at on the process regarding hiring a new police chief? What do we have for applications? I'm just curious as to what your thoughts or plans were as far as the interview process.
Sure.
And all of that good stuff.
Yes, so we've been advertising for a couple weeks now. We do have the closing the the position as being open until filled, obviously, but first review of applicants being August 10th. So at that time, we'll look at essentially a week from today, the applicants that we have. At that time, I will want to assemble, a hiring panel and reach out to qualified applicants to bring them in for an interview. I do want to have kind of some public, when we kind of get to some finalist stages, have some public input components to that as well, so that we can engage the community in the hiring process. So, but it's moving along. We have had a handful of applicants. And to date, we've had about 4 applications, but with a position like this, typically what happens is you set a closing date as the 10th, they flood in on the 8th or the 9th, so that's not uncommon for still being a little bit out, to not have a significant hiring pool. So,
Who all is going to be involved in the initial process of going through the applications?
I've preliminarily reached out to some individuals, but I don't know that I necessarily would comment on, here's the full hiring panel.
Fair enough.
It probably wouldn't hurt to keep the commission abroad with what's going on, as far as the community applicants, or just so that they can know exactly who's applying to my email them to them.
Sure.
Any questions for Andrew? Okay.
I have one more question. So we put out bids to get a new fire chief vehicle.
Yes.
Is that, I'm just curious as to how that works. We're in the middle of the process of trying to merge. Are we looking into buying something new right before the merger? Is that something that'd be a better way until after the merger? Did something happen that was an immediate need of a replacement?
So the fire chief's vehicle, it's been limping along for some time now. It did have kind of another incident recently, which left it dysfunctional. Our opinion, in speaking with Chief James about a procedure forward with that, and obviously bid award has to come from this governing body on that, but with the proposed merger, the structure of it is going to be that all assets that the city currently owns are going to remain as city assets, and all of the assets that the county own are going to remain county assets. So Brian needs a vehicle. I think this vehicle is one of the more heavily used vehicles actually in the city fleet, and kind of at the rate that we're going to get this vehicle replaced, it does seem like it's going to be some time before any one entity is able to replace it. With the merger, we think it would be strategically advantageous to the city to purchase this command vehicle before the merger, almost as an insurance that the 2 entities will remain merged after the process goes through. Because then again, if the command vehicle is a city purchased vehicle, the county would be disincentivized from reneging on the merger, because then the command vehicle would go back to the city, the county would be without some sort of operational vehicle. So we actually see it as a good thing to get it before the merger goes through, because then there's kind of an insurance policy on the other side. That's kind of the thought process so far. And then those dollars the other dollars can be pivoted towards jointly purchasing apparatus and things like that down the line. So.
All right, sounds good.
No more questions for Andrew?
I'm just kidding.
We move on to item B, Fire Chief Building Inspector, Brent.
Hello. So, hadn't been that long ago since we talked. So, right now we're still working on ISO testing and all that stuff, so we'll be getting all of our fire pumps, apparatus tested here probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So we'll have a individual come out, and what he'll do is he puts all the pumps through a certain pressure test, make sure that all the tests, or all the certain PSIs are where they need to be for a certain amount of minutes and so forth and so on. And then the aerial, ladder wanted to do for its 5-year non-destructive test on the stick itself. So what they'll do is a individual will come out and he'll do x-ray of the entire stick and make sure there's no micro fractures in the stick, and then certify it that way as well. ISO requires that your aerial be tested non-destructive wise every 5 years, and then a annual regular inspection of it, being looked over and putting a 500-gallon tank on the end of it and holding it up in the air for X amount of minutes. That's done every year. So that'll be done, like I said, in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We'll have that taken care of. We also need to get our 5-inch hose tested. So that usually takes roughly a good 6 to 8 guys to do that. We usually do it on a Saturday. So we'll have to take up the street somewhere. Usually we go out to the industrial park and we go out there on a Saturday. Usually takes probably a good 2 to 4 hours. So I'll probably do that here either in August or early September before corn harvest starts going. So if you ever see us out there, that's what we're doing, testing our 5-inch hose. So again, that's also another ISO thing we have to do. So other than that, all the apparatus is doing good. We don't have any leaks. No truck's been broken down. Everything's been good. Ladder one, we had to send it off to Elizabeth, Colorado, get some work done on it, but we got it back. That was probably 2 months ago. We had that taken care of a month and a half ago. So other than that, we have regular training tomorrow night. If you guys are bored and want to come and see your fireman come and train, you can come down here at 7 o'clock at the station. That's where we'll be at. So, any questions on the fire department before I move on to the building side? No? Okay. On the building side, Holiday Inn, it's moving along, taking forever, but it's moving along. I went out there today and did a walkthrough inspection. Right now they're getting mechanical work done, finishing up with mechanical work. Drywallers are still drywalling in the pool area. They got painters on the 4th and 3rd floor. They're painting the rooms at this time and putting in tile in the bathrooms. Other than that, the elevators are getting installed at this time as well too. They're at Holiday Inn. So when I talked to the head manager or the head GC, he was saying that they're probably a good 2 to 3 weeks behind what they're thinking. They're hoping to have the doors open and start bringing people in of September to start renting out rooms, but at this pace, they're probably going to be moving into October with some of the hiccups they've been having with getting items and materials and all that stuff. They blame it on COVID. That's what they're blaming it on. So, anyways. There's a house/shop going to be built on East 22nd Street. I don't know if you guys know where Matt Miller's house is at, but it's going to be built straight to the east of that. So that's another project that's going up right now. Other than that, there's just small projects going around town, some small garages and stuff like that. So Dakota, he's being busy with code enforcement. I think he sent out about 170 letters so far on weeds notices, and then sending out letters on other random stuff, right?
Yeah, a lot of structures.
A lot of structures, yeah. So, come on up here, you can explain to them what you're wanting to do on your structure deal.
Siding and stuff?
Yeah.
So I've been going around the code states, like your paint chipping, siding without hail damage. There's still houses that have hail damage from 2016 hailstorm, just roofs that they couldn't hold water. So I've been going around and trying to get some movement on these. I waited till midsummer just to kind of see if anybody would start anything. Nothing's happened, so I've been going around being an equal comparison all through town. There's some little things that's like, do you really send a letter on that, or do you kind of give them a little leeway on some of these things? But then there's those houses that are just they haven't been touched for years. They've broken windows, hail damage, the chip paint. So there's probably, I think I'm up to roughly 60 houses in town that I'm dealing with to see if they can't kind of beautify it a little bit. There's nothing we can do about mismatched paint or any mismatched roofing, anything like that. It's just whether or not it's functional. So that's kind of what I've been working on, as well as my yards when I'm going through town.
I have a question while you're here. A few years ago, the commission had passed an ordinance where double wides were concerned. And the way the ordinance read, I mean, if I remember accurately, it stated that if there was a current double wide in a geographical location, that an individual could take that out and put a brand new one right in where it was.
Yeah,
without any conformity.
Right, so it has to be a manufactured home residential style. That's what has to go in. I think you might be getting confused with single wides. Because single wides, you cannot take a single wide and put it where a double wide is.
I understand that.
Right. So no, people can do that. I don't know if you're getting complaints about that or having issues with that.
No, just, had a taxpayer call me about a possibility of replacing a double wide.
Yeah, so I know what you're talking about. The property's at 8th and in the location of 8th and Walnut. So the issue with that property is that they in fact were wanting to remove the double wide and put in a single wide. That's what they had advised Dakota, and Dakota brought to my attention about it. They can't do that. They can't take a double wide and put it in a single wide. So also the other issue is that's a corner lot. And I know this issue's been brought up I'm sure to a couple of you commissioners about that 15-foot extra setback that we have to have on corner lots. The only way that I would be comfortable with allowing them, and within the code, allowing them to replace a double wide with a double wide on a corner lot is that if the exact same footprint is the exact same. They go smaller, obviously, but they can't go bigger than that footprint. Because if they go bigger than that footprint, they're probably already in violation of that 15-foot setback, guaranteed. You go around town, you're going to see a lot of properties that are in violation of that 15-foot setback on corner lot. So, me as building inspector, that's the only way I'm going to allow an individual on a corner lot to put in a double wide or manufactured home, that's what they're technically called. Again, as long as it's 100% the same footprint and it stays within that area. So, but they haven't personally talked to me. I know they talked to Dakota, but the question was, can they take the double wide out and put it in a single wide? No, they can't. So,
yeah, the ordinance,
right.
is pretty specific on that.
Right. Yep.
So we as a commission need to decide whether we want to keep that 15-foot setback ordinance or not on a corner lot.
Yeah, because it's kind of silly, to tell you the truth, because on a lot of these corner lots, so like Kevin Butts, he was building a shop, and he wanted it in line with the existing house. The house has been there since, I don't know, 1940s, 30s. Anyways, the point is that he had to build the shop farther back than what he wanted, but the code wouldn't allow him to build it where he wanted it. So, in my opinion, I think as long as you stay in the existing building line, it should be allowed to be built, in my opinion. If the house was built there in 1940, why can't you build a structure that's within line? Again, well, two, as long as obviously it's not violating any site triangle ordinances or anything like that, but 99% of them don't. If they do, build it right up against, right on the building line. So, again, that's a discussion that I guess that you city commissioners need to have, whether you want to keep that 15-foot additional ordinance. Again, I don't know why in 2002. I guess you guys need to talk to some of the original
commission.
Yeah, the planning commission. I know, Bryce Cole was one of them. Dr. Emmel was one of them. There's a whole list of 7 of them that that were on that commission that came up with all that information, so you might only want to pick their brain and see why they came up with that or not. So.
Either that or, like JJ says, make policy and just change it. Right?
Yeah.
I'll get that on the agenda, so we can talk about it.
Any questions for Brian?
I just have a comment. I brought it up a few weeks ago, but we got into, or a couple months ago maybe, got into budget discussions and it never wound up on the agenda. But I think we've kind of failed at times as a commission up here with your guys' department and kind of not supported what has been, and myself included, what is in the writing. And something's brought, someone doesn't like whatever it is, and we bring it up here, and then we kind of just go along with it and say, no, don't, it's there, but don't really worry about, don't enforce it, basically.
Right.
We kind of sidestep what's there, and I think we're doing you guys a disservice and an injustice, and I think that it came blatant during the pool discussion, and it was no one's fault. I mean, because of the COVID stuff and trying to, oh yeah, that seems, fair, like I was trying to get by for the summer or whatever. But after I left that meeting, it's like there's definitely a safety concern there. And I've treated patients that have had accidents, and they're never the same. And it's a bad outcome, the ones that survive actually. And so I think, it just brought to the forefront to me that I think we need a more formal, and I don't even know liability-wise if we can do that. We can sit here and tell you guys to just don't worry about it now.
Right.
Even though it's on the books, right? If something like that were to happen, could they come back on the city? So I think as a process standpoint, I think how we need to go about it, if there's a complaint, whoever that complaint is, the person come up here, public comment can come up and make a complaint, or that maybe like commissioner can bring it forward. I know there are all kinds of people that talk to us about certain things, and we throw it out. If there's interest in it, we need an up or down vote, whether to take it on, leave it the same, or if there's interest to change it, put it on the next agenda. But if not, it stays on, and you guys, until it's formally voted on differently,
right,
you guys just keep on keeping on, and you don't have to be in this limbo. Okay, I'm starting out, no, I'm not gonna pull the letter back, or I wish I would have said that because now I'm not getting support up here.
right.
So, and I think we got to stop that. And I've seen, and that's when I got on the commission, I've heard time and time again the inconsistencies of how the ordinances were being, I guess, enforced. And I can kind of see why it's no fault of your guys' either. It's, well, we've already done a few times up here.
Right.
And I'd just like to see a formal process going forward. If we're gonna change it, let's change it. If no, let's move on, keep going. If we want to amend it, let's do it formally. Everyone votes on it, and we move on. That's fair to everybody, because the ordinance should just be black and white, no matter who it is, who brings it forward. And I'd like to just see us handle it that way. And we shouldn't see something unless we're going to do something about it.
Yeah, and actually I had visited with Andrew about that same issue, about having discussion on one way or the other, maybe in November or something. I mean, we're getting ready to do away with these things. At the last discussion that we had, we all consensusly agreed that we would leave it, until we had another discussion. Now, we can have that discussion at any given time, as far as, and I agree with you, we have to formalize, we have to have a discussion and then take a formal vote and, and vote your convictions. I've had people, contact me, representing both, perspectives. When we started visiting, I didn't agree that the swimming pool should be out in the front yard because of the aesthetics. It belonged in the backyard, and the issue comes up with that it has to have a fence built around it. One of the arguments that was brought to me is the fact that we built a fence, but we don't put a cover, and a kid goes in and drowns, who's going to be liable? You built the fence, but then so if you want strict protectiveness, just like the taxpayer said, then you know, you put a cover that they can't get into, that's gonna, you know, keep them a lot more safe than a fence. So, you know, but it is a healthy discussion that we need to have. I agree with you, JD, that, you know, I don't know when you want to put it on the agenda, but I think, you know, we need to address it.
I wasn't asking anything specific, just anything that comes.
Period.
Yeah, just a formal
Yeah.
way we go about it, and so they know going.
Right.
They're just letter by the law, you know, they're just enforcing it until they're told differently, and they aren't getting the mixed signal from us, and when we didn't even actually formally change anything, so.
Well, no, I appreciate you saying that, because there's been times where commissioners field complaints from the community, and then they completely, in my opinion, cut our legs out from underneath us, because what'll happen is they'll say, well, this is what's going on, and I don't agree with this, and the code enforcement officer's enforcing it, even though it says it right there in the book, it's black and white, and then a certain commissioner will say, oh, don't worry about it. And then that person will go to the code enforcement officer, well, a certain commissioner said don't worry about it. That makes it hard for us to enforce our job. So I would appreciate, me personally, is what does the code say? I mean, the code is available to everybody. It's on Unicode, it's at the library. I mean, it's available to the public. Anybody can go watch it. We're not trying, or read it. We're not trying to hide anything from anybody. So, and that goes for obviously this body as well too. The code is available for everybody to read and understand it. So, the code and I just aren't making stuff up as we go. So, but I agree. I appreciate that.
We need a policy to protect ourselves from ourselves. We're going to handle it the right way, not just professional help. So I don't know what that looks like, but that's what we need probably going forward.
Is there any way when you send a complaint to the landowner, if you could send it to the leasee also?
So that would be a policy change, because only in our code, and I don't know if that, maybe I have to talk to league, that'd be an Andrew question, and maybe a Jake question, because for our code, it specifically states that it has to go to the property owner. It doesn't go to the renter, it doesn't go to the person leasing the property, it goes straight to the property owner. So if the property owner lives in Arizona or wherever, that's where it's going to. It's not going to the leasee. And then it's now the responsibility of that property owner to then talk to the renter and say, hey, I got a complaint on my property that you're renting from me, that you're in violation of whatever code, you need to get it cleaned up by X amount of time, or else I'm on the hook for your problem. So again, I think that would be a league question or a Jake question to see legally, do we let the leasee or the renter know, or is it strictly just the property owner? So I think that's more research that needs to be done. So
Yeah, the reason I asked, some of these leasee or property owners are pretty big and they get so many complaints. Did they talk to that property owner up front, or is it building up until they kick them off when they get so many complaints?
right.
Did he get?
See, because they get the same thing. So in the letter of state, you have 10 days, you have 45 days to get, and those are the two numbers usually that you either have. And it's up to the code enforcement officer to figure out whether he's going to give 10 days or give 45 days. So if the property is, it's a small issue, it's good judgment, 10 days should be able to take care of this issue. If not, then we're going to take it to the city court or municipal court or to you guys. If it's a big problem, got massive stuff on there, we're going to give 45 days. And that goes to the property owner. And then the property owner then sees, okay, I got 45 days to get my property cleaned up. And then they have to go make sure that their leasee or renter is making sure that's being taken care of. So that's their property, that's the property they're paying taxes on, that's their responsibility to make sure that their property is being following the code. So if you're talking about like big companies, again, they don't have, there's no leeway one way or the other. They have the exact same amount of time frame, just like everybody else, so they have to get it done. So they're just not gonna stack it up like what you're saying, they wait until they get 10 different complaints and they finally, tell the person you're getting kicked off, so. But
I think one of the issues that you run into, both from a logistic and a public perception probably standpoint, is that the implication of doing it that way is that leasees need to start filing their leases with the city. Because how else would we know what property is being leased, what property is being rented? We don't keep that information. So for us to send something to a lessee, that means that if you have a rental agreement or a lease agreement, you have to file it with the city so that we know there's a property owner and a lessee for this property. That is a lot for us to take, to track, and then that is probably not the best, I mean, my personal opinion, not the best optical thing for the city, that any private agreement you have needs to be filed with the city office. They can get kind of angry on that. But
kind of muddy in the waters too. Like,
The example is the hearing we had just earlier.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, because Dakota he has title search done on it, and what he gets, the title search person, which is legal, gives him everything, and that's who he's sending the information to. So he's not going to go do extra footwork and do try to track down who's renting the property and not renting the property. So, okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Brian? Brian, thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Move on to item C, Andrew.
Mayor, we'll have Sammy give her
Hello. So I'll just give you some updates on what the museum's been going through the last couple of months. So the board and myself are really excited about our entryway renovation project. The grant from the Dane G. Hansen helped out a lot. So we're looking at a fall start date. That should be enough for the summer traffic to die down. And then we'll start getting those products in so we can start hopefully in the fall. That of course depends on weather. So that's kind of what we're shooting for. Visitor count so far, year to date, we've seen 904 people. That's down. June and July from last year, we're almost triple down. We saw 300 people through the doors last year, so we're down, but that's to be expected because COVID, people aren't traveling, and we were closed for 2.5 months. So, staff, what we've been working on, we've done an entire clothing inventory, and that included condition reports. So we went through every piece of textile we own and checked it out to see that it was there and good and all of that good jazz. We're working on digitizing our railroad collection, all of the artifacts we've gotten from the Rock Island Railroad during that day. We're digitizing all of that so it's all searchable in case something happens, we have it all there. And then the last thing, I would like to invite you all to the museum. We've got a really great exhibit about the Tuskegee Airmen and a local World War II exhibit that's on right now. So I invite you all down to look at it.
Thank you, Sammy. Any questions for her? All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Move on to Commissioner's report, Jaden.
I think, well, one question, I guess. benefit stuff and other line items like that to be on the discussion, as well as I wasn't aware till this year, I've been on here a couple of years, so the retired benefits or retirees combined into the plan as well. So I'd like that to be on the discussion to see. I have my own thoughts on both of these, but just trying to, if and when anything were to change, I think it'd be best to do it sooner rather than later to give people the most time, because in talking with employees, that's the biggest thing, is to have time to plan and make decisions and know what's happening. We got a number down, for the budget, and so we know where we're at there. My mind on my vote for that was to give some leeway to, depending on what happened with any changes possibly with the insurance plan, where we could have some leeway to do HSAs and different things. So in my mind, that was my thinking on approving, the budget we did. But I still would like those items further discussed, because I think they're important. And but we can get into that if we get it down. That's it for me.
Mary?
I don't have anything.
Did you?
I don't have anything either. Just like to say just thanks to everybody that's listening, thanks to all the employees, everybody in town.
Mary?
Well, one of the reasons I voted against the budget is they offered a $1 an hour wage increase and thinking that there was going to be a 4% insurance charge to the employee, and then we throw in that, take that 4% off too. So it, instead of 50 cents an hour, it turned out to be $1 an hour raise. And that's why I voted no. That's all.
Andrew, a couple of items. If you're traveling north on Arcade and you hit 8th Street, right there on the corner, that tree to the left hand is really obscured. And I think maybe we've had this conversation or not, but I've had several calls and people have come really close to having an accident on there. So you might want to check with, or Rich, you might want to drive through there. Dan is shaking the head, that's really a mess.
That's
Huh?
That's Brian. That's Brian's area, it's a side triangle.
We've had the code up
there. A site triangle violation is the issue. It's kind of in a weird spot. And yes, we're well aware of that tree and the issue it poses, but in the code, a site triangle is defined by, the process for measuring the site triangle. So it's obstructive, but it's not a site triangle violation. So I don't know exactly how to.
Very, it really, well, I would encourage the commissioners to drive by there. Well, you probably can't see it. And it really, the other area is if you, you go in Caldwell and just take Cherry Street to 5th and then go back west on the corner of 5th and Caldwell. You have to go out quite a ways to be able to see the traffic that's coming from the north. And I was parked on the other side the other way. Somebody came really close, but I could see why, because they couldn't see, and the car was driving within the speed limit.
Sorry, did you say 5th and Caldwell?
5th and Caldwell, but you have to be coming west on 5th.
Okay.
All right. The other thing I liked the other day, I was out, driving around, and I happened to got caught at a Steak and Shake, but I had a pure visibility towards 24/7, and I saw an individual was having problems with a travel trailer, and I saw, a policeman was helping, and so I just stood there and, observed it, and he did, an extremely good job. He, assisted the individual, and after he assisted him, he even escorted him all the way out, and I told my wife, I said, now, there's a good action, a good process for Goodland. That individual was stopping Goodland all the time. Well, time goes on, and I didn't know who it was. Later, I found out it was Officer Gerhardt. So, our hats off to you. He did a good job, and that's the type of representation that we're looking for.
Thank you.
Jason. The other thing, I was coming back on Saturday. I had gone out to get something to eat, and I was coming north on Highway 27, and I climbed that viaduct, and then there was this pickup, and there was this motorcycle ramrodded right underneath of it. And I mean, it was just horrible, so I immediately, pulled over, went around and pulled over to the side and, tried to get as much help as I possibly could to him. Several cars, in fact, there was some local individuals, some friends that I hadn't seen. They were in town for Mrs. McClure's funeral, and they come up and they help. So I called 911, and I think it was Officer Tim and Officer Roeder that showed up, and I just told them exactly what was going on. They did an excellent job, so they're to be commended. They did, they represented Goodland very, very well. So kudos to the police department. And that's all. That concludes my report. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So,
Hands up, second. All right.
You don't know what to do with that tree.
I'll be in early.